When you hear the word guillotine, a very specific visceral image probably flashes in your mind, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you picture Marie Antoinette angry mobs filling the cobblestone streets of Paris.
Yeah, exactly. The chaotic, blood-soaked violence of the French Revolution. It stands in our collective memory as, the ultimate symbol of state terror.
Right, it's a terrifying image.
But what if you learned that this terrifying machine, this towering wooden frame with its heavy angled blade, what if you learned it was actually invented as an instrument of profound mercy?
It's just one of history's ultimate paradoxes. I mean, the intention behind the design of the guillotine and the grim reality of what it eventually became, they are light years apart.
Totally. And that is exactly what we are getting into today. We're doing a deep dive into the historical records to trace the wildly contradictory history of the guillotine.
It's a wild ride.
It really is. Our mission here is to explore this wild paradox. We want to trace how an Enlightenment tool, one that was genuinely designed to democratize death, morphed into this mascot for political purging.
And how it shockingly survived well into the 20th century, which I think surprises a lot of people.
Oh, for sure. Okay, let's unpack this. Because to truly understand how a decapitation machine could ever be considered humane, we first have to talk about the gruesome reality of what came before it.
Yeah, humane is always a relative term, right? You really have to look at the baseline of the era.
Right. What was the status quo?
Well, before the French Revolution, capital punishment in France, and really across most of Europe, it was heavily class-based.
Meaning the rich got one treatment and the poor got another.
Exactly. The way you died was a direct reflection of your social hierarchy. So if you were a member of the nobility, you were afforded the privilege, I guess you could call it, of a relatively quick death by beheading.
Usually with a sword or an axe.
Right. But even that was a massive gamble.
Yeah, the sources point out that families of a condemned noble would sometimes literally bribe the executioner.
Oh, yeah. They'd pay them to sharpen the blade beforehand just to ensure it took only one swing.
Which is so grim to think about. Because if the executioner was unskilled, or, if the axe was dull, or the condemned moved even an inch,
it often took 2, 3, or even more agonizing blows to actually finish the job. It was messy.
But as horrific as a botched beheading sounds, the commoners had it significantly worse.
Oh, much worse. For the lower classes, execution wasn't just about ending a life. It was about inflicting maximum physical suffering.
And making a very long, drawn-out public spectacle of that suffering.
Right. Commoners were usually hanged, and depending on the rope and the drop, that could take many agonizing minutes of slow strangulation.
Or they faced even more grisly fates, like being burned alive at the stake,
yeah,
or the breaking wheel, which, I think is one of those brutal things we came across in the research.
It's truly awful.
Imagine you're in a public square, and you have to watch someone tied to a large wagon wheel, and an executioner systematically uses an iron bar to shatter every major bone in their body.
One by one.
One by one. And then the victim was just left there, woven through the spokes of the wheel, to die of shock or dehydration over hours or even days. It is just brutally visceral.
It's horrifying. So that was the terrifying status quo. And into this nightmare steps Dr. Joseph Ignace Guillotine.
Right.
It's October 1789, so we're in the early, hopeful days of the French Revolution. And Dr. Guillotine pitches a radical idea to the National Assembly.
And interestingly, he was actually a staunch opponent of the death penalty.
He was, yeah, but he realized he couldn't abolish it entirely. So he proposed a simple mechanical device to decapitate all condemned people equally, swiftly, and without pain.
It's like he was trying to upgrade the societal operating system.
That's a good way to put it.
Society was running on these clunky, agonizing, error-prone manual processes, and he wanted to install a highly efficient automated system.
Right.
He was essentially trying to democratize death, ensuring everyone, regardless of their tax bracket or social standing, got the premium treatment.
The underlying philosophy here is crucial to understand, too. This was the Enlightenment.
Right. Big philosophical shifts happening.
Exactly. There were radical new ideas circulating about human rights and the inherent dignity of man. The philosophy of justice was fundamentally shifting.
Away from torture.
Right. Under this new Enlightenment thinking, the goal of capital punishment was simply to end a life as a legal consequence, not to inflict unnecessary pain or torture.
So having one standard painless method for everyone, from a peasant to a king, that was seen as a profound expression of equality among citizens.
It was a very democratic ideal, in a dark way.
Wait, I'm struggling with the word egalitarian in this context.
So,
Well, does standardizing and automating death actually make a society more equal? Or does it just grease the wheels for the state to kill at scale?
oh, that's the big question.
Because by removing the gruesome physical effort and the visual torture from the executioner's job, don't you just lower the psychological barrier to deploying the ultimate punishment?
That is the pivotal tension of this entire history. By sanitizing the process, they inadvertently industrialized it.
Right.
When the state no longer has to stomach the hours-long horror of the breaking wheel, the state finds it much easier to issue death sentences.
Which brings us to the bizarre engineering of the machine itself.
Yeah, the actual building of it.
Because the idea for a humane death was pitched by Dr. Guillotine, but we have to debunk a major myth right off the bat.
A huge myth.
Dr. Guillotine didn't actually invent the machine that bears his name.
He did not.
And contrary to popular legend, he didn't die by it either. He died of natural causes years later.
His name just became the eponym because he championed the legislation so passionately. The actual prototype was built by a bizarrely diverse committee.
I love this part.
You had Antoine Louis, who was a prominent French surgeon and the physician to the king, and they hired a German engineer named Tobias Schmidt to actually construct the physical prototype.
But Tobias Schmidt wasn't just an engineer, though. He was a harpsichord maker.
Right, he made instruments.
You have a surgeon, a king's physician, and a guy who builds delicate keyboard instruments, teaming up to build a decapitation device.
It's wild.
That sounds like the world's most macabre DIY weekend project.
It really does. But, they weren't starting entirely from scratch, to be fair. The concept of a gravity-powered blade had been floating around the cultural consciousness for centuries.
Yeah, they looked at earlier beheading machines used across Europe.
Right, like the Halifax gibbet in 16th century England, which used a massive sliding axe head.
And there was the Scottish maiden and the Italian mannaia.
There's even a text from the year 1210, the High History of the Holy Grail, that features an imaginary automated beheading device.
But the French committee refined it into the terrifyingly efficient machine we know today. And the most famous refinement came from a very unexpected source.
King Louis VI himself.
Right. The king was apparently an amateur locksmith and had a keen interest in mechanics.
He did. And the official executioner at the time, Charles-Henri Sanson, claimed in his memoirs that the king looked at the early designs, which used a crescent-shaped blade, and pointed out a major mechanical flaw.
What's fascinating here is the physics of that design choice, paired with the sheer inescapable irony of the moment.
It's unbelievable.
The crescent blade relies entirely on blunt chopping force. It hits the cervical vertebrae and can easily get wedged in the bone, stalling the mechanism.
Yeah, which defeats the purpose of a clean cut.
Exactly. So the king suggested an oblique, sharply angled blade instead. An angled blade acts much like a modern chef's knife or a paper cutter.
It uses a slicing, drawing motion that cleanly severs tissue and bone with significantly less friction.
And he was offering this casual engineering tip to optimize the exact machine that, just a few years later, would be used to sever his own head.
I mean, you can't write that.
You really can't. He was the ultimate symbol of the ancient regime, that old, rigid system of absolute royalty and feudal privilege, and he quite literally helped sharpen the instrument of his own demise.
It is a dark, almost unbelievable twist of fate. So they perfect the machine based on his advice. They test it on sheep and calves, then on human corpses.
Right.
And on April 25th, 1792, it is officially debuted on a highwayman named Nicolas Jacques Pelletier.
And it works exactly as intended. It is swift, it is clean, and compared to the breaking wheel, it's an absolute medical mercy.
It really was.
But this is where the story takes a massive turn, because this tool of Enlightenment compassion is almost immediately co-opted.
Yeah, the revolution radicalizes. We enter the period known as the Reign of Terror, from roughly late 1793 to mid-1794.
And the guillotine transforms overnight from an instrument of penal reform into the ultimate weapon of political purging.
The sheer scale of it is staggering. During the Reign of Terror, roughly 17,000 people were guillotined.
So 17,000, that's just...
It's hard to fathom. This included King Louis VI, Marie Antoinette, and eventually the revolutionary leaders themselves.
Men like Georges Danton and Maximilien Robespierre.
Right, men who had enthusiastically sent thousands to the blade before meeting it themselves.
And it wasn't just a grim bureaucratic process either. It became a massive public spectacle.
Oh, it became a macabre festival.
Yeah.
Executions were held in major public squares, like the Place de la Révolution. Enormous crowds would gather daily.
Yeah.
Imagine you're walking through a public square in Paris, and vendors are weaving through the crowd selling printed programs that list the names of the days condemned.
Exactly like you'd buy a program at a baseball game today.
It's chilling.
The machine became a perverse kind of celebrity. The public gave it all these dark, affectionate nicknames.
Oh, the nicknames are wild.
They called it the Widow, the National Razor, the Silence Mill. They called it Cap Hates Necktie, Cappy being the king's family name.
Right.
And my personal favorite, the Patriotic Shortener.
The patriotic shortener, wow.
The working class radicals, the sans-culottes, they didn't view it as an instrument of oppression. They viewed it as a positive, tangible tool for revolutionary progress.
They really did.
So what does this all mean? How does a society emotionally process and actually celebrate that level of normalized daily violence?
Well, it means we have to understand the guillotine not just as a weapon, but as a theater of justice.
A theater of justice.
For the revolutionaries, the machine physically demonstrated the destruction of the old world. Remember that under the ancient regime, privilege dictated how you lived and how you died.
Right. The nobles got the sword, commoners got the wheel.
Exactly. The guillotine leveled the playing field in the most violent, visible way possible. When the crowd cheered the fall of the blade, they weren't just cheering death, they were cheering the visual, undeniable proof that the aristocracy bled exactly the same way the peasantry did.
Wow.
Equality in death equated to equality before the law.
That is a chilling way to frame it. Equality achieved through an industrial blade.
Yeah.
And, we tend to think of the guillotine as firmly locked in that 18th century context, surrounded by men in powdered wigs and knee breeches.
But it wasn't.
No, the guillotine didn't stop in France. If we trace its lineage through the 20th century, we see it morph from this public spectacle of revolution into a hidden, bureaucratized tool of modern state extermination.
The timeline of its use in the 20th century challenges our entire narrative of modern progress.
It really does.
As states evolved, they didn't necessarily abandon the guillotine, they just adapted it to solve different logistical problems.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's look at how different governments handled it.
Okay.
France kept executing people publicly with the guillotine all the way until 1939.
1939, right before World War II.
Exactly. The last public execution was a convicted murderer named Eugen Weidmann. But the only reason France stopped doing it in public wasn't because the state suddenly found it inhumane.
No, not at all.
It was because the crowd's behavior was so unruly and, quote, hysterical, according to the records, that the French president was disgusted and ordered all future executions moved behind closed prison doors.
So just wanted to hide it.
Right. France tried to hide it out of shame, but they didn't officially abolish the death penalty and the guillotine until 1981.
1981.
The last person to die by guillotine in France was Hamida Djandoubi in September 1977.
1977. I mean, that is well within living memory for millions of people today.
It's crazy.
And while France was pushing the machine behind closed doors out of embarrassment, other regimes were actively scaling it up for efficiency.
In Germany, the guillotine was known as the Fallbeil, or falling axe.
Right.
Over time, they engineered it to be sturdier. They built them primarily out of metal instead of wood, with heavier blades and shorter uprights to reduce the mechanical reset time.
Which is terrifying.
They even added a metal screen to hide the blade from the condemned person's view and removed the tilting board so they could process executions faster.
They took an Enlightenment tool of mercy and turned it into an assembly line.
Yeah. Between 1933 and 1945, Nazi Germany used these modernized heavy metal guillotines to execute approximately 16,500 prisoners.
16,500.
And 10,000 of them were in 1944 and 1945 alone. This included famous political dissidents and resistance fighters, like the Dutch communist Marinus van der Lubbe.
Right.
And think about the chilling contrast here. Sophie Scholl, a 21-year-old university student who distributed anti-Nazi pamphlets with the White Rose Resistance Group.
Yeah, an incredible figure.
She was executed using the exact same mechanical efficiency designed by a French doctor 150 years prior.
It's heartbreaking. And the bureaucratization of death continued behind the Iron Curtain after the war, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The Stasi in East Germany utilized the guillotine for secret executions well into the 1960s, finally ceasing its use in 1966.
1966, and it even appeared in Southeast Asia.
Right, right.
In 1959, the regime in South Vietnam enacted a decree that dispatched mobile special military courts into the countryside.
They made it mobile?
They literally strapped guillotines left over from the French colonial era onto trucks and brought them right into the rural areas to intimidate the population and carry out death sentences on the spot.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the guillotine functioned almost like an open-source technology of death.
Open source.
Yeah, it was terrifyingly easy to export, adapt, and scale. From mobile terror units in Vietnam to the industrial-scale execution chambers in Nazi Germany, Dr. Guillotine's simple mechanism proved to be infinitely adaptable to the needs of any state apparatus looking to dispense with human life efficiently.
Which brings us to a bizarre moment in modern American history, because this device almost made a comeback in the United States in the late 1990s.
I still can't believe this part.
In 1996, a Georgia state representative named Doug Tepper officially sponsored a bill to replace the state's electric chair with the guillotine.
It sounds totally absurd to modern ears, but from a purely mechanical standpoint, Tepper was actually echoing Dr. Guillotine's original argument.
Right.
A clean blade is undeniably more reliable and likely faster than electrocution, which has a horrific history of being botched and causing immense suffering.
Okay, but if the guillotine was universally recognized as more humane and mechanically efficient than the electric chair, why did Doug Tepper's 1996 proposal fail so spectacularly? Is it just because the psychological baggage of the guillotine,
Yeah.
the severed head, the blood, the legacy of the Reign of Terror, is just too heavy and too visual for modern society to stomach?
It's entirely about visibility and psychological distance. Modern society has a profound squeamishness when it comes to the physical reality of violence.
Yeah, we really do.
We prefer our capital punishment to look like a peaceful medical procedure, like lethal injection, where the person just appears to fall asleep.
Right. It looks clinical.
Exactly. The guillotine is undeniably brutally honest about what is happening. It violently severs the body. It produces a tremendous amount of blood.
It's messy.
Very messy. It forces society to look directly at the reality of state-sanctioned death, and we generally refuse to look at that.
This modern squeamishness brings us right back to Dr. Guillotine's original Enlightenment promise, the promise of a painless death.
Right, was it actually painless?
Because the great, gruesome debate that has haunted this machine since 1792 is the question of the living head.
This is where it gets really dark.
Because the blade falls so fast and the cut is so clean, does the brain actually survive decapitation, at least for a few agonizing moments?
It is the ultimate nightmare scenario. You design a machine specifically to prevent suffering, but by doing so, you might have created a completely new, unimaginable type of psychological and physical horror.
The source material shares an absolutely chilling account from a French physician named Dr. Gabriel Beaulieu in 1905.
Oh, this account is famous.
He was permitted to closely observe the severed head of an executed prisoner named Henri Languille immediately after the blade fell into the basket.
Yeah.
Beaulieu wrote that for the first 5 or 6 seconds, the eyelids and lips worked in rhythmic contractions.
Which you might expect.
Right. So he waited for the spasms to stop. And then he called out the prisoner's name in a sharp voice. He said, "Languille."
The response he records defies our basic comfort about death.
Beaulieu writes that Languille's eyelids slowly lifted up.
Without any spasms, right?
Without any spasms, in a totally normal movement, like someone waking up.
Wow.
He says Languille's eyes, quote, very definitely fixed themselves on mine, and the pupils focused themselves.
Think about how terrifying that is. You're looking into the eyes of a severed head, and it looks back.
It looks back. Bury insists he was dealing with undeniably living eyes which were looking at him.
And it happened more than once.
Right. The eyelids closed. Bury called his name a second time. The eyes opened again, focused with even more penetration before closing.
Incredible.
Only on the third call did the eyes remain still and take on the glazed look of the dead.
It is a profound medical horror story, and it taps into a very real biological mechanism.
How so?
Well, when the head is cleanly severed, the brain is instantly deprived of new oxygen and blood pressure drops to 0.
Right.
But the residual oxygen in the brain tissues isn't instantly depleted. It takes a few moments.
Wait, I have to play skeptic here. Is this actual conscious awareness? Or is the doctor just witnessing involuntary biological spasms like a massive misfiring of severed nerves as the system shuts down, and he's projecting a look of recognition onto them because, deep down, he expects or fears a response?
This raises an important question, and it is the exact question that scientists and historians still fiercely debate today.
So we don't know?
There is no absolute scientific consensus on what Henri Langille experienced in those seconds. It might be entirely reflex, the nervous system firing wildly in the absence of a body, or, terrifyingly, it might be fleeting consciousness as the brain rapidly loses oxygen.
That is just deeply unsettling.
That ambiguity is exactly what shatters our comforting illusions. We want to believe we can perfectly engineer a painless death, but the biology of the human body is messy, resilient, and deeply mysterious.
It leaves us completely in the dark.
It really does.
So to quickly recap the incredible journey of this deep dive, we started in the bloody, unequal public squares of 18th century France with the breaking wheel.
Where things were as bad as they could get.
Right. We met an Enlightenment physician who genuinely just wanted to end human suffering by standardizing death.
A well-intentioned idea.
We traveled through the gruesome, theatrical spectacle of the Reign of Terror, where his machine of mercy became a celebrity of slaughter.
The patriotic shortener.
Exactly. We witnessed the horrifying bureaucratization of the device by 20th century regimes, from Nazi Germany to Vietnam.
And even its near revival in 1990s Georgia.
Right. And we ended with a haunting medical mystery about human consciousness staring back at us from a basket.
It's a staggering trajectory for a device that is, mechanically speaking, so incredibly simple.
It really is. So we'll leave you with this final thought to mull over. If a machine designed purely out of a desire for human compassion and equality can so easily be co-opted into an instrument of mass terror, what does that say about the powerful technologies we are building today with purely good intentions?
It's a heavy question.
Think back to Dr. Guillotine, standing before the assembly, believing he was offering a gift of mercy. Sometimes the road to the reign of terror is paved with the best of intentions.